The anointed ones, welcome. This isn't about Elon Musk. It's about you. When a man who builds rockets and rewrites economies pauses to ask if you need him, that's not ego, that's recognition. The kind that only comes when someone finally notices the frequency that's been quietly shifting the ground beneath everyone's feet. You were never meant to fit in, because you were born to redirect. The world often feels like a game programmed to numb you, distract you, make you question your instincts. But that itch in your mind, that unshakable whisper that says, "There's more than this," that's not a glitch. That's your calling code activating. Some people are selected to lead because of their resumes. Others are born to lead because of their resonance. You fall into the latter. That's why the system never made room for you, because you weren't here to enter it. You were born to override it. So when a Titan asks, "Do you need me?" and dares you to skip if you don't, it's not just a question, it's a test of your readiness, of your clarity, of your authority. Chosen one, the world is finally starting to notice what you've known all along. You don't need to be invited to lead. You just need to decide to stop waiting. Shall I format this as a video voiceover, motivational reel script, or dynamic caption? The most powerful persons in history have not been those who adhered to the rules. They were not the ones who lived for praise, sought approval, or pleaded for permission. Rather, they were the anomalies, the ones that moved silently and caused chaos. And the world either dreaded or worshiped these individuals when they came out. And you're here for just that reason. You have been designated for an elite assignment by a strong organization, not for mediocrity or slavery. The police? Yes, they are pursuing anomalies, the folks who don't fit the template and who defy authority, not criminals. And one of them is you. So fasten your seatbelt. This isn't your typical motivational speech. Most guys will never be prepared to hear this harsh reality. Are you? Is the question. First of all, you were never intended to fit in. You were supposed to inspire dread. Being simply another face in the throng was never your intention. The system was created to shape men into dependable, submissive laborers who live in silence, obey commands, and never ask why. Then there are the outliers, the ones who are uncontrollable, the ones who enter a room and change the atmosphere without a word. You already know whether you're one of them. You felt different from the start. Perhaps it was the way others responded to you, rarely with apathy, but sometimes with awe and contempt. To avoid making them feel threatened, weak men wanted you to be more subdued, fit in and shrink. However, true power was never intended to be concealed. There is no fear of mediocrity in the world. It doesn't care about the guys who pursue acceptance, follow trends, and live and die by the opinions of others. It's simple to dominate such guys. But those who don't bow down, those who see the game for what it is and choose to disobey the rules rather than become another pawn, they're dangerous guys. And the system pays attention when a guy like that emerges. They attempt to neutralize you before you even recognize who you are. Because of this, they claim your goals are too lofty and advise you to be practical. They try to dull you into submission by putting false pleasures, temptations, and diversions in your path. The fact is that the only guy the world really fears is one who is uncontrollable. What happens if they are unable to control you? They first attempt to use regulations to keep you in line. When that doesn't work, they attempt to make you question yourself and isolate you. If that fails, people fear you because guys like you command life, not simply live it. You weren't supposed to fit in. You were destined to cause trouble, forge your own route, and be the unexpected storm. And everything changes the instant you accept it completely. The world begins to seem like something you were destined to conquer rather than something you must endure. Second, even the most formidable predators do not roar. They strike precisely and move silently. Those in positions of power don't need to make an announcement. The most powerful people in history weren't the most boisterous. Rather, they were the most strategic, the ones who realized that true power isn't about showcasing or attracting attention. It all comes down to understanding when to attack and when to vanish. It's usually easy to take down the loudest guys. They forget to be powerful because they spend so much time demonstrating their power. Their want for praise, admiration, and attention is precisely what weakens them. Because you cede authority to others the instant you feel the need for outside approval. They have the ability to control your emotions, foresee your actions, and eventually use your own ego against you. The guys who are really dangerous, they don't talk while they move. They watch rather than talk. Since surprise is their greatest weapon, they allow others to underestimate them. They don't spend energy attempting to be spotted. Therefore, you won't ever see them approaching. They don't engage in emotional reactions. They don't accept diversions. And they don't quarrel with idiots. And when they do strike, it's accurate, deadly, and unstoppable. Power has always operated in this manner. A careless show of might is a liability, as the most effective soldiers, statesmen, and empire builders realized. People may plot against you if they are aware of every idea and intention you have. However, people live in ambiguity, and terror is bred by uncertainty if they are unaware of what's happening within your head. Because of this, the men in charge of the world don't brag about their power. Instead, they let their deeds do the talking. While others squander time posturing for an irrelevant audience, they build in the background. And when the moment is perfect, they strike so hard that it's too late by the time anybody understands what occurred. This is the distinction between performative strength and actual power. While the other begs for attention and calls it authority, the first demands respect without requesting it. When the actual fight starts, just one of those guys makes it out alive. Which one are you, I ask you? Third, your ancestry is a code that decides whether you succeed or fail. It is more than simply your DNA. Power comes naturally to you. It's not something you can learn. It is an inexplicable power that distinguishes some guys from birth. It's more profound than confidence, intellect, or strength alone. It is an energy, a presence, and an unfake fire. And that fire has always been within of you, whether you are aware of it or not. It was never intended for most males, thus they don't have it. They had a long history of being followers, men who were happy to obey instructions, blend in, and stay out of trouble. Fear, hesitancy, and the desire for acceptance are ingrained in their genes. They need a society to teach them what is right, a structure to protect them, and a group to feel secure since they are not made to stand alone. They are like that. However, that is not a weakness of yours. You are not of the same breed. The evidence has always been there in your life. The way you've always been unique and stood out even when you weren't trying to. The way you've always challenged things rather than accepting them without question. You were created to confront, create, demolish, and rebuild. You weren't meant to blend in. The world has made a concerted effort to break you because of this. Strong guys pose a danger. Weak ones are easily subdued. But guys who are born with power, everything is altered by them. They manipulate the system to suit their needs rather than just existing within it. For this reason, leaders, soldiers, and conquerors are remembered throughout history. This explains why, despite their professed hatred, the general public admires males who assume authority. When people see power, they automatically identify it. In their hearts, they know who was destined to follow and who was born to lead. What's ingrained in you cannot be faked. It won't work no matter how much you attempt to repress it or behave like everyone else. You will constantly be motivated to soar above the others by that fire. The world will no longer be able to ignore you once you accept it and stop fighting for what you were always destined to be. Fourth, they have a mechanism in place to neutralize you before you ever recognize yourself. They never wanted you to realize how powerful you really are. The way the world is set up, guys like you are kept weak, distracted, and under control before you ever recognize yourself. Every system in existence, including social standards, entertainment, education, and even the idea of success itself, has been meticulously crafted to keep you pursuing false dreams rather than real power. Because a single guy who has been completely awakened and is able to see through the falsehoods poses a greater threat than a whole army of submissive laborers. They began training you from the time of your birth. They advised you to remain still, obey orders, and never challenge authority. You were rated on compliance rather than intellect. Instead, then rewarding freedom, they praised conformity. When that wasn't enough, they added diversions like mindless spending, limitless entertainment, and a society that celebrates frailty. They said that in order to succeed, you had to labor yourself to the bone for a system that would take your place the moment you fell. They led you to think that pursuing dopamine via screens, addictions, and pointless pleasures was the pinnacle of life, and that pleasure was the ultimate goal. Why? Because a guy will never want power if he is always pursuing ease. A guy will never produce if he is too busy consuming. When a guy is overwhelmed with diversions, he will never be able to realize that he is being dominated. The system is afraid of your thoughts, not your body. You become impenetrable the moment you awaken and realize the true nature of the game. For this reason, they promote flimsy beliefs and advise men to repress their desire, ambition, and violence. They admire mediocrity but despise authority. They promote victimization while demonizing strength, because they are aware that a guy who accepts his authority cannot be subjugated. When a man controls himself, he becomes unmanageable, and the whole thing falls apart when enough guys like that ascend. Because of this, they must neutralize you before you recognize yourself. Because if you ever realize how powerful you are, you will not just transform your life, but the game itself. They are frightened by it. Fifth, the uncontrolled are the ones the police pursue, not the weak. The purpose of the police is to safeguard the system, not the public. The largest offenders wouldn't hold the reins of power if the goal were only to prevent crime. Weak guys are not dangerous. Thus, the true goal of law enforcement is not to hunt them down. It's to discipline the unruly ones, the ones who won't give up. Examine the past. The average citizen who obeys commands, does his duties, and remains in his lane has never been dreaded by governments. They are afraid of men who ask questions, cause trouble, or don't follow their rules. They designate that individual as dangerous because he poses a threat to control rather than to society. The system isn't kept up at night by the careless idiot or the small-time robber. The guy that walks differently, doesn't ask for permission, and doesn't want to be owned is the one. He isn't influenced by propaganda. He isn't constrained by false morals, and he isn't terrified of the repercussions. That is the guy who pushes for change, exposes wrongdoing, and takes control from the system and places it in his own hands. And that, for those who rely on obedience to maintain control over the world, it is intolerable. They target guys who think independently, who don't depend on the system for survival, and who have established their own authority outside of the control grid because of this. Because once a guy understands that he can be great, grab what is rightfully his, and create his own path without permission, he becomes an unstoppable force. And the system breaks down when enough folks like that ascend to power. You were selected for this reason: to disrupt, to forge your own path, to become a living example of what true freedom looks like, not to blend in or become just another gear in the wheel. They are afraid of you because of this, because you are uncontrollable regardless of the rules they make, the obstacles they put in your way, or the penalties they threaten. And that's the biggest crime of all, in their opinion. Sixth, your seclusion was training, not a happenstance. The world made an effort to persuade you that loneliness, betrayals, and the sense of alienation were signs that something was wrong with you, and that your seclusion was a burden. However, what if that wasn't a penalty? Could it have been preparation? Most guys never spend enough time alone themselves to get to know themselves. They are always looking for company, affirmation, and acceptance, and they drown in noise. They never sit in quiet because it makes them face their true selves. However, that was not an option for you. You lost the comfort of being one of them, fake connections, and illusions of belonging when life pulled you away from the crowds too soon. It was always about improving you, not about punishing you. Strong men are not created in a crowd. They are not molded by herd mentality, groupthink, or the never-ending need to blend in. They are formed in isolation, when the intellect becomes keen like a sword against stone and distractions are eliminated. It wasn't cruelty when the universe made you stand by yourself. It was a test. Could you stand the quiet? Would you be able to confront yourself without the commotion? Where most men would disintegrate, might you flourish? In order to realize that not everyone in your life was intended to walk with you, and that most people are weak, unfaithful, and fearful of those who don't need them. Betrayal and rejection became a part of your journey, not because you were supposed to suffer. You had to let go of your delusions about who was really on your side because of your loneliness. The weak, the shallow, and the dishonest were revealed. You couldn't unsee it once you saw it. The majority of men never understand that loneliness is the source of genuine strength and spend their whole lives avoiding it. Because you become untouchable after you've learned to be alone and have developed yourself without the need for acceptance. You cannot be shaken by rejection, broken by loss, or weakened by absence. Therefore, embrace your loneliness rather than lament it. It was the process of making you into something unstoppable, not a punishment. Seventh, women in the modern day were created as diversions to keep you out of positions of authority. The system that turned women into weapons is the issue, not modern women. Obedient workers are what the world needs now, not powerful men. Distracting a guy with the one thing that has ruled nations, overthrown kingdoms, and ruined legends is the best way to weaken him. Ladies, this was not always the case. When women realized their purpose was to encourage greatness, rather than to impede it, they began to complement strong men. However, as time went on, the system saw a chance to tip the scales, forcing women to put their own gratification ahead of loyalty and transforming marriages into power conflicts. And after that, guys were pursuing instead of constructing. Examine your surroundings. How many guys have failed because they were too preoccupied with showing their value to a woman, rather than because they lacked drive, strength, or intelligence? How many guys have sacrificed their edge, postponed their goals, or compromised their morals in order to keep up a relationship that just made them feel more exhausted? Too many. And that's what the system depends on. They promote a culture that suggests men's worth is determined by the number of women they can draw and the attention they can get. They lead males to think that the objectives are not independence, mastery, or power, but rather marriage, relationships, and ongoing romantic affirmation. And men ignore while they pursue. They disregard their purpose, their self-control, and their capacity to turn away from anything that does not benefit them. Distractions were a waste of time for the strongest men in history. They were aware of the costs of pursuing acceptance and becoming emotionally involved. It's about refusing to be owned by women, not about rejecting them. A woman ought to be a strength rather than a weakness, a complement rather than a burden. However, in a society where there are more weak men than strong ones, women are rewarded for defying authority and no longer need to align with it. And one selected for greatness cannot afford to get involved. You will restore control the instant you stop pursuing, rationalizing, and wanting. Because power was always intended to be grabbed, not begged for. Eighth, not all battles are waged with fists. Others are waged in quiet and in boardrooms. The most formidable individuals in history were not those who could deliver the most powerful blows. Rather, they were those who were able to outsmart their adversaries before a blow was ever required. Men are led to think that physical strength is the key to domination by the world's exaltation of sheer force. However, what is the reality? It is uncommon for the most dangerous men, those who build empires and manipulate reality, to have to do any work at all. Even before the combat starts, they are victorious. Take a look at the men who have dominated industries, governed countries, and left behind lasting legacies. When a single move on the chessboard might win a war, they wasted their energy battling it. They realized that true power is about ensuring that you never have to demonstrate your toughness, because everything is under the power of the guy who runs the board. Strong men plan, weak guys react. Foresight, or the capacity to anticipate 10 moves ahead while others are still caught in the present, is what separates a pawn from a king. The system encourages you to be emotional, impulsive, and easily provoked. While the main game is being played behind closed doors, they want you to waste your energy on little disputes, get sucked into diversions, and fight the wrong fights. Truly powerful guys use boardrooms, negotiations, and quiet as their tools. They don't demand attention, they don't give commands, and they don't spend time on pointless conflicts. They control the actual battlefield so that the conflict is already ended before their adversaries know what is going on. This is how a selected one thinks. You have to realize that power is about making the world recognize you without a single word, not about proving yourself to unimportant individuals. Not even the strongest guys swing first. They are not required to, because they have already triumphed by the time you consider confronting them. Number 9. Hard guys govern the world, but they will attempt to break you with gentle living. It's not necessary for them to beat you into submission or bind you. All they have to do is ensure your comfort. The new warfare is that men are no longer broken by force. Instead, they are broken by softness, ease, and an easy existence that takes away their advantage before they ever know it has been taken away.